Okay, let me start. So first of all, a very, very warm welcome to everybody. Thanks for joining us on the webinar today. The title, as all of you know, is Architecting the Future of Work and the Workforce. And this is such a fundamental topic and an issue right now that it is going to be a very, very rich discussion that we're going to have today, because we have two really, really eminent speakers amidst us at this point in time. Just to set the context for the webinar, we are sitting at a unique moment in history where it seems like everything is being reinvented, uh, led by the very basic questions around the way we work, the way we learn, the way we think, and what is required from us from an adaptation and a collaboration point of view. The World Economic Forum is essentially calling this a global reskilling emergency. Um, you know, Essentially, they are saying that by over the next 9-10 years, 1 billion of us on the planet need to be reskilled, right? And over the next 2 years itself, 2-3 years, 42% of the core skills that are required to perform existing jobs are expected to change. In addition to high-tech skills, obviously, there is a lot of focus on interpersonal skills, and whether it's related to sales, whether it's related to HR, and of course, healthcare and education. Those are some of the big areas that one would see a lot of action in. The other component of this entire debate or discussion is around what is the future of the workplace? What is the future of culture? Uh, McKinsey study suggests that 25% of workers in developed countries and 10% in emerging economies are wanting to adopt a hybrid model of working, partly at home, maybe mostly in office, but at least only in office kind of a model is gone. I think it's finished for most companies, industries, and so on and so forth. Uh, Inside such operations, what is the importance of resilience? What is the importance of cognitive ability to learn? And adversity, how does one overcome that? So today's webinar essentially is going to, at the very heart of it, capture three main things, and it will be a rich discussion around these things. What is the future of culture? What are the shifts in the uh, requirements? How do you still create a cohesive, a one firm kind of an environment? How do you drive organizational success in the future, given that everybody is not able to meet at a water cooler and bond? So what are the implications for culture? What is the implication for learning? What is the future of learning? And how should our universities and the parallel systems around learning systems, which are complementary to universities, companies like what Pramath has founded, Harappa, and so on, how do they contribute towards the future of learning? And very, very importantly, what kind of skills do senior executives and founders like Mohit Thukral are looking for? What is the future of skills? What are the key competencies? So overall, these would be some of the topics that we would be discussing today. One thing that I have seen, and especially over the last 4 or 5 years, is that there is a sense of panic in the air, that what will happen to jobs? What is the future of jobs? I just wanted to lay it out there that essentially there is no reason to panic. Major disruptive discontinuities have always had a net positive outcome for the world as such. So even though 75 million jobs are expected to be lost because of automation, at the same time, digital innovation is leading to 150 million jobs being created over the next few years. So net, work from anywhere, work from any time, and various kinds of segments of society and population coming into the workforce because of these flexibilities, I think net we don't have any reason to worry. Obviously, it all comes down to execution. How should we take these opportunities and these threats and convert them into major positive outcomes? So, with that, maybe let me first request my colleague to launch our first poll. So, Dipanshu, if you can launch the first poll, please. If everybody can please respond. Dipanshu, you can bring up the results. It won't be surprising. This is a poll we had also run at Benori. And yeah, I mean, everybody has sees this. There is a need for almost every one of us to reskill ourselves in some way or the other. Our numbers at Benori were 91.9, but that's also fine. It's in the same direction. So with that, let me maybe introduce the two speakers with us. Indeed, it's my privilege, and I'm really honored to introduce two very dear friends over the last several decades. They're inspirational leaders in their own right. First, Mohit Thukral. Mohit is a founder of Vivtera, which is basically a reliable, results-driven global business transformation services partner focused on assisting financial services and fast growth tech companies gain a significant competitive edge. Prior to this, Mohit was a top 5 senior executive at Genpact, used to run the financial services business there. And he's also an elected member of the NASSCOM Executive Council. He's also a co-founder and a co-trustee at Plaksha University, and was also part of the founding team at Ashoka University. So welcome, Mohit. It's indeed a pleasure to have you here. Second, let me introduce Dr. Pramath Sinha. Feels strange calling him a doctor because he's a very, very close friend, but truly he has been a big inspiration in my life over the last 25 years. Pramath is the founder and chairman of Harappa Education. And also before that, he had founded and is the MD of 9.9 Group. He had a stellar career at McKinsey, was a senior partner there. And I think in 1999, if I remember correctly, Pramath, around that time, he took the charge of setting up ISB in Hyderabad. And he continues to be on the executive board. And of course, he's also a founder and trustee at Ashoka University and numerous other universities that Pramath is helping us set up. And finally, he is also a founder of the Vedika Scholars Program for Women. Welcome, Pramath. Indeed, a privilege to have you here. So before I hand it over to Mohit to talk about some of the aspects of the workplace, maybe we can just quickly do a quick snap poll around two elements. So Dipanshu, if you can please launch the first poll. Dipanshu, the results, please. So not surprising, essentially 94% of people want to have some element of work from home. And our survey at Benori also, that number was 89%, but again, it's directionally the same. Next poll, please. If we can have the results. Yeah, so obvious, you know, culture of lifelong learning, soft skills, digital acceleration. Somehow, I don't know why nobody's marked digital acceleration. But all of the above is 86%, again, which is directionally correct. So with that, maybe over to you, Mohit, and some of the topics that we thought might be interesting for us to discuss would be around what is the physical dimension of work? How is that going to change? What are some of the hybrid models? And you had mentioned to me yesterday that one of the companies you acquired last year is basically a gig economy company, and that company has done wonders last year, pre-COVID, I mean during COVID, and now. So it will be interesting, very interesting to hear from you as to what you have done there. Right. With that, over to you, Mohit.
Thank you, Ashish. Really appreciate you having me on this panel with Pramath. Pramath, so good to see you after a while, though on Zoom. Uh, but look, everybody who are listening to this webinar, it's my pleasure to be chatting here and really looking forward to our interactive session towards the end of this conversation. So look, I'm not going to state the obvious. I'm actually going to state the obvious here. But look, we've been spending, all of us have been spending enormous amount of time working from home. I think the digital acceleration of the future of work has happened in 12 months, which would have taken 10 years. And I think we are now at a cusp of really everybody redefining and reinventing their operating model, right? And most of the operating models are getting redefined in the services sector. Some of the impact of the redefinition of the operating model will trickle down to some extent to manufacturing. But the urban India and the urban or the developed economies are really going to be a huge beneficiary of this shift on the change of workforce, right? Now it's a bunch of things are happening. I'll jump in here. You know, I don't think so. Any of us, and I'm sure in all your organizations, you all are working through the blueprint of what is going to be the future of work. None of us are going to go back to how we worked in 2019. And the world, like I said, is completely shifted. We all have gone through that change over the last 12 months. I truly believe that the hybrid model, and this group also polled that way, the hybrid model is there to completely stay. What will happen is that some statistics and data which is being out there, in developed economies, 1/3 of the workforce, in urban areas, and most of it will be in the services sector, will be driving the whole hybrid model of working. So 3 out of the 5 days, or 3 to 5 days in a week, at an average, people will work from home. But if you look at some of the developing economies like India and the Philippines and China and some of the other countries in the Asian region and Africa, I think that number of dimension will be different. And that is for two different reasons, because working from home or hybrid model creates a bit of a challenge in geographies like India, Philippines, Asia and Africa and some of those countries which are not developed because of the sheer lack of infrastructure. Even today, if all of us are working in Guntur or Darbhanga or some other smaller cities, internet is still patchy and it'll get better over a period of time. So the services sector will obviously start evolving to the dimension of the hybrid model. And I think clearly different organizations and different sectors will define how that will play out. Clearly, 20-25% of the workforce in the advanced economies will work from home or will work in the hybrid model, and it could be 10 to 15% in emerging economies like India and China. So it's here to stay. It's here to be there, and it's going to be very, very relevant as we look at this dimension. I think the big challenge which will emerge and is emerging, and I'm sure a lot of you are already experiencing, while there has been a lot of conversation on that working from home has driven productivity up, but I think if you look at it from a long-term perspective, time will tell how much of that productivity has gone up. But productivity is something we can all manage and we can figure out. But I think what's going to happen is what is going to be a real big challenge as you look at the whole hybrid work from home model of the future and the future of work as the way it gets defined is going to be in terms of how will you build the right culture, how do you innovate, how do you collaborate, and then the big thing is how do you train people, right? How do you constantly train people? How do you bring in technologies to drive data security, data efficiency? So all that is right now being built and experimented with, right? And I think the biggest challenge is going to be how do you train a remote workforce? How do you manage a remote workforce? Doing it for a year and doing it for life is going to be different. So there are phenomenal technologies that are getting built and have been there in the past, but a lot of companies have not used, I think are going to come right up the curve in terms of how you use them. And I'll come back to some examples in a bit in context to the company which we bought, which is Arise, which you see their logo behind my screensaver. Um, I think the other big opportunity I would call is that it's creating a very different workforce that is getting created. We are now have the ability to tap into, I would say, at least in a country like India, 50% of our workforce, and how do we bring them more into the mainstream? Our country is 49%, 50% women. As all of us know, as in most organizations, as you go up the pyramid, then the percentage of women in organizations drops down. They are at 50%, and then at a senior level, it starts dropping down to 30, 25, 15 in that level. I'm a firm believer that the digital model and the hybrid model of workforce will increase and has give us a different workforce and an additional workforce into the mainstream globally, and that is women. A lot of women who go back and bring up kids and spend time at home will come back into the workforce, and that's such a phenomenal shift which I think will happen. And what is required, not just for them but for a lot of other people, and Ashish touched upon it, reskilling and skilling talent is going to become a really big thing, because the workforce and the nature of work is shifting. Automation, digitization has accelerated again in the last 12 months. And the acceleration of digitization is eliminating a lot of the work types and the kind of work we did 1 year ago or even 2 years ago. Point an example. If you want to do a KYC today, even in a country like India, you can do a KYC from the bank by using your mobile device and doing a live WhatsApp call or a video call and authenticating someone and doing that session, right? We could never think of that solution 1 year ago, and the banks, I can tell you, globally or locally, would have said, no way, we are not going to do this. So I think the elimination of work will drive the challenge to upskill people. And I think upskilling our workforce, our women workforce, the workforce which is going to really get eliminated because of the digitization, is going to be the big push that will happen over the next 2 to 3 years. Upskilling is becoming a big part of the focus here in India. In the IT sector alone, there is this big conversation of to reskill 2 to 4 million employees over a period of time. I'm not saying at one go, but over a period of time. Globally, if you talk to countries, there are big time focusing on driving skilling. UK, Australia, US, most companies are saying, how do you really skill and reskill people? And I think the dimension of that is also going to shift towards where the input is happening, where you're saying, how are universities and colleges now getting people for future ready workforce, right? So future ready for the future of work is going to be, again, a very big element of how things will play out. And I think the other big thing that is really going to shift, and I'm a firm believer, and I believe very, very hard, very, very, I'm so positive about that, is that work from anywhere is going to drive the dimension in a younger population, especially in countries like India, where 70% of our workforce is below our population is below the age of 70, below the age of 30, is really going to make the shift in working from anywhere and becoming and wanting to do one or two things rather than doing one thing all the time. So this gig workforce is going to be a very large part of our workforce as we go forward. I mean, in the US, just for some statistics, 54 million out of 330 million people are in the gig workforce. In India, that number is only 15 million, which is about 10%, and is a bit like in the US is more like 18 to 20% of their workforce, right? So clearly, India is going to see an accelerated jump in the gig workforce worker in the future. So there are different themes that are emerging, right? The work from anywhere, the hybrid model is really defining a very different skill that will be required. It will bring in a different profile of workforce into the mainstream. It will build an opportunity for gig workers to work from anywhere. But I think the challenges that all of us will have to live with is, how do you really skill the talent, and what our countries and organizations and universities and academia are doing for that. Three, how do you really manage the complexity? How do you really train for complexity now in a remote environment? So you'll have to really build a lot of tools around AR, VR technologies to create an interactive model of training of our colleagues and our employees around the world, whether it's in India, in the US, or in Europe, in any part of the world. I think those technology shifts are really now happening. Three, I think you have to have the hybrid model. Is the only way it's going to work. It's not going to work that everybody's going to work 5 days a week. So the whole agile workforce model, plug and play offices, your desk becomes a hot desk. Every of that dimension will change, and people will start getting folks to come to office 2 to 3 times a week, collaborate, then have those work teams work remotely. And I think that shift is going to happen, is happening, and will accelerate over the next 2 to 3 years, and will obviously become the norm. But I think the biggest challenge the organizations will have to fight is, how do you drive innovation? How do you drive collaboration? And how do you use agile tools to really make things work even more cohesively in an everyday environment? So I think all that is playing out. Different companies are experimenting with different technologies. Large tech players are jumping in to provide those tech solutions, whether it is AWS, whether it's Microsoft, and some others. I think the one big thing which all of us have to be very conscious about is data security and cyber security. Cyber security and data security are going to be very, very critical in this value chain, because as we work from anywhere, as we work from home, as we build hybrid models, as we use more tablets and handheld devices, moving from desktops, the whole data security and cyber security will become such a huge element, and companies will have to drive very important factors of having some of those things really mastered. I just want to jump in, because I think all of this is happening, and for us, a little bit of Arise. This is a company, and it's a fabulous use case. It's a company we acquired along with our partners Warburg Pincus in November of 2019. This was pre-COVID, and we all never knew there was a COVID world. Arise is a work from home business. It's a gig model. It uses like an Uberize platform, where people who service come to the platform, they sign up, they then get onboarded, they get trained, and then they deliver to customer SLAs, right? and these are gig workers. So our workforce is 89% women, average age is 39. They drive excellent empathy, superb quality of work. We have figured out over the years how to remote train and remote manage that workforce to deliver to those SLAs. But I think what has happened in the heightened work from home environment and work from anywhere, we all have to get very smart. And I'll give you very specific examples of all of you should be thinking about. You don't want people to impersonate you. Mohit is working from home, but is he or she really working from home and somebody else is not sitting on the desk and doing the work? So how do you monitor people working from home, right? In certain countries, laws don't allow you because privacy laws don't allow you. So how do you do random system monitoring and snooping, as they would call it? How do you bring in technologies like if I take a picture now, my screen will go blank? How do you really insert those technologies? So these technologies are being inserted. So today, for example, if I'm doing this webinar and if I'm taking a picture, my screen will go blank if I take a picture because the tools are being set up on my laptop, right? So I think some of that will change. Managing and training people remotely is going to become very, very critical. So, and how do you make sure there's efficiency and effectiveness of those people? As people were in our offices, we used to huddle with them, we used to talk to them. So all that shift is now happening. And we do believe that the work from home is here to stay. The gig workforce is going to be a very large part of our workforce. The type of work that you will do, the future of work dimension is changing. So that's going to happen. And you have to reskill the talent is going to be a very, very important component of as we go into 2021 and beyond. This year is again till the next 6 months, we'll manage. But I think the world will get completely reset on how the future of work will happen, 6 months down the road. And the type of work that we do will completely change. So the skill required for that will become very, very different. So I'll pause here and pass it back to Ashish and then Pramath.
Thank you so much, Mohit. Very insightful as always. And your last sentence had the word skill in it, which is a nice segue into talking to Pramath. So let's maybe pivot the conversation and start talking about from the current workforce to the future workforce, from the current skills to the future skills. And what are the dynamics there? What is the changing demand profile there? And I obviously know what Pramath is doing at Harappa, but would love to hear it from him directly as to how he's thinking about the future of skills through Harappa also, and to serve the market. But before I hand it over to Pramath, could I request Dipanshu to bring up the two polls, please? Dipanshu, if you can bring up the results, please. Yeah, so clearly the top two and the top one is resilience and adaptability, and that's not a surprise. I mean, we live in a VUCA world, and there's just so much volatility and so much uncertainty everywhere. And the ability to adapt and be resilient and rise from adversity, I think, is a key skill and a key mindset that one needs. And clearly, critical thinking will never run out of fashion. So that's obvious. Second one, please, Dipanshu. Dipanshu, you want to bring up the results? So clearly, I mean, and this also was the result in our own poll at Benori. I mean, this is a predominant number of people are saying that skill-based education, uh, is what is required, what is the need of the hour. So with that, over to you, Pramath. Really looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Ashish. I think Mohit provided a good segue for me as well at the end, as you picked up. What I thought I'll do is quickly tell you how I have chosen to put all of this together in my head, especially because I think this is a very aware and educated audience. If I look at the polls, then I think they are already uh, converted in some ways to my point of view or what I'm about to share, and what I have to share is not going to be new. So I will try to just give you a sense of how I organize these things in my head, in how I think about what implications it has for students and professionals and higher educational institutions of the future. So, four big trends that I look at in all of this from my vantage point. The first is that we are all going to live longer and work longer. So increasingly, people are talking about the fact that we are going to live to be 100. Maybe not me and my generation, but there's increasingly belief that there are now children. There are children who are now born who will live beyond 100 as a routine. Some people have even said 150. So the living longer point also seems to suggest, and maybe we are biased by our current life, that people will then work longer as well. And I think you see a little bit of evidence of that already. In my own family, my sister turned 70 last year. She's a retired police officer. And I know that she works harder post-retirement than I've seen her work before, and continues to work at the same pace even post 70. And she doesn't have to work. That way, she's fortunate enough to not need to work. But the point being that people will want to or continue to be mentally and otherwise cognitively engaged for much longer. I'm 56 and I just did a startup. I remember when my father was 56, we used to just think of him as retired and that he would never really be doing anything meaningful in terms of work after that age. So living longer and working longer is one big trend. The second trend is that jobs are going to be unpredictable. The type of jobs are going to be unpredictable. So I think Mohit has already talked about that. I think you've seen that in the polls. To give you an example, what I do now, which is to build higher education programs, whoever thought I would be doing that, or I could do that, or anybody could do that. And by the way, I'm not unique. There are other people who are setting up universities and colleges and programs, and both of you are. So this has become a thing. Schools, fellowships. Similarly, I always give the example of one of my students who works for Uber Eats in London. Now, whoever predicted that there would be a job with a company called Uber Eats? So very unpredictable what kind of roles will be happening. Number three, you're not going to do one of these roles, but you're going to do 10, 15 of these different roles in the context of a longer career. So if you take the first 2 points, which is the longer life, longer career, and unpredictable jobs, it's not that you don't know what you're going to do next. That feeling is going to come every few years. So I can tell that Ashish has clearly shifted careers, right? He's now, he's involved in knowledge and knowledge services, but hey, Ashish was doing these webinars. He makes a great anchor for webinars, as you can see, and he's mastered this, and I think he loves it as well. And So this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek about how Ashish is changing, but I think all of our careers has in my generation has shifted multiple times, and in the next generations to come, careers will shift dramatically many more times. So it's not just the unpredictability of the type of job, but it's the certainty that you will constantly keep shifting. And it's not just a change in a role within a sector or an organization, but you'd completely shift careers. So that's the third point. And the fourth point is that in these shifts, there will be a reskilling, the point that has already come up, required in terms of your technical skills. So it is true that, and Zoom is a great example, right? We've all had to reskill ourselves to use this technology. And I still get flustered between Zoom and WebEx. I still can't get PowerPoint to work on Microsoft Teams because the way it loads into Teams is very different from how a PowerPoint simply goes through Zoom. And when you have to do this on the iPad, you can't shift from the iPad audio to your AirPods. And, even for a trivial thing like that, we have to constantly learn new technical skills, right? And I'll come to soft and critical thinking and resilience later. So I think these are the four big trends that I see. Live, work longer. The nature of jobs or the type of jobs being very unpredictable. You don't really know what's coming. Third, multiple careers in one life. And fourth, the need to learn new technical skills. Now, if you take these four trends, what does it really mean for us as well as the next generations to come? I see three types of agility, as I call them, that you need to have. And I think agile in the lingo of software product development and strategies is already there. And I'm here now using the same word in the traditional context of how do you constantly adapt and move quickly. And agility is also about resilience. So that is implicit in what I'm saying, right? So the first is the cognitive agility that you need. And you need cognitive agility where your mind can quickly start to think from first principles, because you're going to be presented with situations, careers, challenges that you've never seen before. This is happening for the first time because of all of the changes that are taking place. So you need to take snap decisions. You need to exercise judgment. You go back on your experience, but you say, by God, I've never seen this before. And so how do I deal with this? The second is emotional agility. And the pressures and the changes require you to be fairly emotionally intelligent, but also stable. It requires emotional resilience. Look at what the last year has meant for all of us in terms of resilience and emotional stability. And not only are you trying to support yourself, you have to support your employees, your co-workers, sometimes your bosses, your board members, your investors. So I think that's a much bigger requirement at the workplace since Daniel Goleman first came up with the idea of emotional intelligence. I think the fact that you have to be inspirational and demanding at the same time, you have to deal with really tough and awkward situations. Mental well-being at the workplace has become a big issue. So it's not only your well-being, you have to take care of the well-being of all your employees, and so on and so forth. And then the third is the ability to learn quickly and learning how to learn. So that's the whole idea that has been talked about, and that's at the heart of reskilling and upskilling, which is the learning agility. So cognitive agility, which is how you think and being creative, innovative, using critical thinking, and so on. The emotional ability to be inspirational, to be responsive, to be empathetic, to be vulnerable, to be courageous, to be authentic. These are all parts of the corporate lexicon now. And then the ability to learn quickly, to have a growth mindset, to be able to pick up on things very quickly. I mean, I have to tell you, this is a tough one for me, for example. All my life, while I've done new things and different things, what people don't know about me is that I'm actually a very slow starter. When I pick up something new, it takes me a while to get my head around it and to get deep into it. And part of it is cognitive agility, but part of it is that, it's not easy for me to learn. And by the way, I best learn when somebody teaches me something verbally. I'm very poor at learning something from a book. And by the way, while worse still from PowerPoint slides. So a lot of what I do at Harappa has voiceovers in it, because for me, voice is very important. So all of us have different ways of adapting to this situation. And again, cognitive, emotional, and learning agility become very important. Quickly to wrap up, if you kind of put all this gyan aside, what am I doing? And Ashish raised this, what am I doing at Harappa, and how is this getting manifest? So listen, I think the technical skills, what we are doing with digital learning and so on, all of the focus on reskilling is something that I'm a big believer in, and I'm not going to repeat some of the stuff that all of you know, Mohit talked about, and so on. I'm going to again bring out 3 points, which what I'm focused on with Harappa, and that's kind of my beliefs. Number one, you need the soft skills. Nobody is focusing on it. You need it also. You need the technical skills, but the soft skills, and what we call soft, and actually it's terrible that we call them soft, but be that as it may, they are the hardest of the skills. Nobody is teaching this stuff. In our schools and colleges, we are neglecting this. And this is what our children need. So it bothers me that we are not bringing this back into our curriculum. And by the way, when we talk very proudly about the old universities and the gurukuls and our Indian education system, this is what our education always was, right? It was not only about technical skills and an education training you for a job. That was the Western model. The Indian model was never that. And I'm not trying to create some sort of a jingoistic narrative here. I'm just saying that we have it, given the fact that we are a much older and in some ways wiser and deeper civilization. We knew this always. We've allowed this to go out. We need to bring it back. We need to get people to understand. And I call these skills thrive skills, skills that help you thrive in your life, regardless of what job, what career, what geography, and so on. So for example, how well you communicate your ideas, which is what we are all doing right now, and now that we do it remotely, is a evergreen skill. It's foundational. Doesn't matter what job you're doing, whether you are a nurse or a high-end software scientist or a artificial intelligence guru, you need that. So I think we need to emphasize that. Yet, I went to a decent school many years ago. I went to IIT. Nobody really taught me how do you convey your ideas in a cogent manner if you have to convey it to a group of people or to an individual. Yeah, I mean, I participated in elocution and debates and drama and all that, but that was by osmosis that you learn. So small point is the thrive skills, and I think of them as cognitive skills, behavior skills, emotional skills, and so on, have to be taught. And we should not be shy about admitting that. You teach it online, offline, schools, colleges, English, Hindi, Bengali, you have to. Second, we have no hope in hell if we don't use technology to teach this. Blended is the best. I think we all love to do a little bit online, a little bit offline, a little bit live, in person. I think that's the future. And finally, my big takeaway is that 4-year degrees, 3-year programs, 2 years masters, 16 years of school education, Now you have to study all your life, but in a fun way. Uh, I think education is going to become, going to be an ongoing part of education, which is very much the kind of learning we all had throughout our careers. That is going to get much more formalized at the workplace, outside of the workplace. We keep learning on our own. And people will learn in bursts. And it won't be the 3 years, the 4 years, the 2 years. And so universities are going to become institutions for life. People like Harappa are going to have to do education for life. We are all going to have to build institutions that will teach you lifelong. So those are some of my immediate thoughts that I thought I'll share with you. And then Ashish and Mohit, happy to be engaged in a discussion or take questions as well.
Thank you so much, Pramath. As always, extremely concise, synthesized, a lot of great insights coming out of there. I wish we had more time, but unfortunately, that's not the case. Thank you for writing out all the questions in the Q&A window. Maybe as a next step, I can take some of these. Mohit, the first question is for you from Dipali. Dipali actually works at IBM. She's their CMO in India. The question really is that the pandemic has upended generations of working women in the US, especially 5 million of them have lost their jobs. So what makes you so confident that there is a trend here around women and leadership and women in the workforce and so on?
So look, look, 10 million people lost jobs, 55% for women, 45% for men. I agree with the party. You know, it's obviously created some pressure on as the world shifted to the pandemic, right? And it came as a bolt from the blue. I truly believe that a lot of the job losses in America, which happened, were in the services sector. Large part of women actually work in the services sector in the US, which you're predicting towards only the US. But I think all of that will come back. And I think the way the work will get defined by companies in the more hybrid model as we go forward will give more and more women opportunity to balance that work. And I think if the hybrid model shift also happens, I think in at least developed economies, men as well will have to jump in to manage the homes. As in a lot of cases in the US, actually, I know a lot of women who are CEOs, men sit at home and do work, right? So I think that shift will always have to happen. I actually truly believe that in the US, still a lot of women work. I think it's going to be a big positive for us in India. And I'm truly passionate about this, that a lot of working women who went back, left jobs at large companies at IBM or Genpact or any other large organizations will come back. And I think we have to find programs which are 20 hours a week, flexible structures we'll have to create for these workers coming back into the mainstream. I think we have to shift our mindset more so now because it is work from anywhere.
Mohit, can I just ask a follow-up question on that? And just very quickly, you know, especially with women who have taken a break in their careers, right? They are at home for a few years and then they want to come back. That coming back is never easy, right? So how does one work on that mindset and get the confidence going again?
I think Ashish, it's a bit of it goes back a little bit of how do you reskill and upskill, right? Because if you've had a gap of 5-6 years, how do you reskill and upskill? And I think that has to be either done if you're coming back to the organizations you left, and those have to find a way of reskilling and upskilling the talent which is coming back in, or you have to really have built programs around reskilling and upskilling. And look, a lot of organizations in India are actually doing that, right? I mean, there's a big agenda for NASSCOM to reskill and upskill, right? And the big focus is how do you reskill the women workforce out there? And IBM, Diwali, is a big part of that initiative, right? How do you really drive more impact and upskill and reskill? So I think all those forces have to come together, external and internal, to drive that shift and have them back into the mainstream.
Right, right, right. So that's a good transition into Jean's question. I think, Pramath, if you can take that. She's basically asking how can we democratize skill building programs, because not everybody will be able to access universities or even expensive professional courses. So what do you do?
Well, I think the 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 couple of things that I would say is that the technology based learning really does make it much more accessible, more uh, not only from a point of view of reach and access, but also in terms of cost. Now there are concerns about the digital divide and whether people can actually access the content online because they may not have a device or they may not have the bandwidth, but I think that's changing very rapidly, and I think there's a lot of innovation happening with people trying to create content or products that are accessible easily over low cost devices and as bandwidth improves. The cost is very interesting because once you create, so particularly if you're creating asynchronous or recorded content, then the marginal cost of offering it to somebody just becomes zero. And that's why a lot of content is now available for free. In fact, I've been recently building a platform for the government where we've assembled a lot of amazing free content and curated it to fit into particular skill sets or particular areas that people want to. So I think technology is going to be the great leveler there. And I know that people have concerns that technology is creating another divide, but the way I've been seeing it spreading, it's been quite massive. We've just launched, for example, already in Harappa courses in vernacular languages. And so that's another access point where most of the training is available in English, but you can very quickly move into local languages and so on. And I think people are concerned that, how can you ever learn completely online? And that's true that online may not seem to be as effective as in person. But to me, online is a little bit like what happened when books came around, and people never thought that you would learn anything from books because you had to actually sit in front of the teacher and learn from them. Whereas what is very now clear is that just as books completely revolutionize and democratize knowledge, I think online will do the same.
Thank you, Pramath. Mohit, maybe the next question is for you, and this is from Mukti Kharka. So basically, I think it's a given point that companies will move towards a hybrid model. How do you monitor performance and how do you get performance from your employees, whereby, not everybody is going to be disciplined about this, all your employees. So you need to have a process part of it. And then I guess there is the culture part of it. So how do you get the best performance out of your employees in a hybrid environment?
Yeah, great question. Look, this is going to be the biggest challenge. And there is obviously a lot of work happening on, design and measurement in terms of how do you measure for output and performance. The last 1 year, customers have said, it's okay, doesn't matter, it's COVID. If we go on an ongoing basis, there has to be some method to the madness. I think it can be done. Like I said, the company we acquired, Arise, it monitors for the last 15 years, it trains and manages performance remotely, and people deliver to the outcome that they're supposed to be delivering. So you have to build very good technology platform for measuring some of that. And the supervisors who do remote monitoring have to have different techniques of managing that and looking at the outcomes that are getting generated. So I think the tools, the technology layer has to get even stronger because most organizations don't have strong operations, management, ERP tools and technology to do remote monitoring, or monitoring is the wrong word, remote management, and look at measuring the efficiency and effectiveness of these employees. So it is going to take some time. It is going to be a bumpy ride. But yeah, there will be people who will try to game the system, and they game the system even today. And I think different tools will have to get built where you build checks and balances that you've done today within your own office environments.
Okay, thank you so much, Mohit. Uh, Maybe this is the last question, or let us see how this goes. And this is for you, Pramath. This is from Devika. She's saying there is a new focus on micro learning and focus on just in time rather than just in case. I should learn this up just in case something comes up down the road. And obviously, there is a huge focus on transferability of skills. How do you think this will play out in India, especially for workers in more precarious situations? People who are more, let's say, in insecure careers or industries, or any other situation where their personal situation is precarious. How do you think this might play out, and what would be your advice for people in general? How should they think about? And when you were talking earlier, I was also thinking about it. In the good old days, we used to have career planning, right? We used to say that, look, let's plan for the next 15, 20 years. Let me pick up these skills. How do you plan these days?
Yeah, so I think that's partly what I was trying to hint at, Ashish, that it's very difficult to plan, just as it's difficult to plan strategies for our companies and come up with product roadmaps for whatever we offer to our clients and customers. I think it's very difficult to plan our own lives in terms of jobs and careers, and when some jobs will completely go away, where new ones will appear. And you already alluded to the massive shifts that are taking place. So I think this is where, what I was saying comes in, that there has to be something that keeps us whole, that keeps us grounded and rooted through this very shifting set of circumstances, or as Devika calls them, precarious. And what really grounds you is these foundational skills that you develop. And that, I think, you develop throughout your life. You don't give up on them. But first and foremost, you have to understand what those are. Somebody has to make you aware that these are the things that will hold you in good stead throughout your life. You know how in our old days, our parents used to say that, get into the habit of, eating vegetables, because vegetables will give you a healthier lifestyle, right? These days, the big thing is, try not to eat too many carbs, because that's what adds to all of the diseases that typically human beings have. I think we need a dose of those types of inputs. And I may be sounding like I'm trying to peddle something here, but to me, those are what I call the thrive skills, or foundational skills, or life skills, or whatever. I think we need to make everybody aware that regardless of what, that's what's going to ground you and keep you whole in case jobs shift and you are in a precarious situation. And of course, there are those things that you can learn just in time. So then you have to have the confidence that, how do you learn just in time? Just as I was saying, for me to learn just in time, it's easier to come to you, Ashish, and say, please explain this to me, than to go and take a class, right?
Right.
So each one of us has to learn how just in time will work and how our foundational part will work. And the combination of those two will give you the confidence that come what may, I'll be able to manage.
Right. No, thank you for that. And maybe one last question, and this is for you, Mohit, and this comes from me. As you were talking about the changes that are happening in the workplace, and you were talking about Arise and so on, I was just putting our good old consulting hat and just trying to think about what are going to be the top 2 or 3 key success factors for companies going forward, just at a very high level.
Ashish, I think the one big factor is going to be that how do you really get the right talent, right? Because the war for talent is always going to be there, right? I think the companies, because their ability to get workforce from anywhere, I think the pick on them to get the right talent is going to be very, very critical. Yeah. Because organizations need really good talent to really drive organizations, right? So I think that's one of the big things. I think organizations will have to have become more nimble and digital is here to stay. I mean, if you look at 1 year ago, people still felt that digital is passe. Some places it works, some places it doesn't work. I think COVID has taught us that the the digital economy, and especially in India, India is going to be it's a $1 trillion digital economy. The digital economy is here to stay, and I think if people who don't jump into that bandwagon and ride that wave, that's going to go away. And I think the third one is data. People will have to really look at, because the access to data is going to become easier. Even all of us in India who are using the Cohen app and getting vaccinated, all the data is there now. And if somebody is trying to game the system by saying he or she is comorbid and is taking a shot, that data is going to your health companies. And you can behold, 6 months later, these health companies are going to go after you and say, okay, your insurance premiums are going to go up. So everything is now getting linked up, right? And, the whole way of saying nothing is connected and jugaad works, I think some of that will change.
Right. So talent, digital, and data. I mean, those are the three keywords, right? That's what you were saying. No, thank you so much. And this is a fascinating discussion, and I wish we had more time, but unfortunately, we are out of time now. So first of all, really would like to thank both of you, Mohit and Pramath. Thank you so much for spending the time with us and giving us your expert comments and opinions. Um, with that, I would like to call this webinar to a close. I'd just like to remind you that as you log out of the webinar, a short 4 or 5 question feedback form will pop up. Please do fill that out, because that will only help us in becoming better for the next series of webinars. So with that, thank you so much again once more, and look forward to seeing all of you back again in our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us, Ashish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.